Welcome back to another episode of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast, powered by ISOFIT, Oro Muscles, and Firefly Recovery. ISOFIT is my go-to for all things isometric strength training. For more on ISOFIT, be sure to check out isofit.com. Oro Muscles revolutionizes rehabilitation with real-time actionable insights into muscle activity with live biofeedback and instant analysis, which has made a huge impact in my work with athletes. For more on Oro, be sure to check out oromuscles.com. Episodes like this are made possible by Firefly, the official recovery provider of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast. For more on Firefly, be sure to check out recoveryfirefly.com. Joining me today on the podcast is Sienna Parekh. Sienna and I are going to be diving into her journey in lacrosse, ranging from her time at Nottingham to her time in international competition, the travel associated with that, the obstacles and injuries she's faced, the setbacks she's faced, and how she's overcome them, and overall the mindset and mentality that she's adopted to become successful. This is a phenomenal episode, and I really appreciate Sienna's time and all the amazing things that she is doing. Highly recommend you check her out online if you haven't yet. Enjoy. Sienna, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to work with you today. For people who aren't familiar with you and all the incredible stuff you're doing, especially in the lacrosse space, would you mind filling them in a little bit about who you are and all the great things you got going on?
Yeah, of course. So, as you said, I'm Sienna. I play lacrosse in the UK from England. I'm currently in my final year at the University of Nottingham, part of their lacrosse team, but also I'm part of the Team England and Team Great Britain lacrosse team in both the tennis side and the six-a-side formats.
Did you say both the tennis side? Oh, the tens?
Yeah,
Yeah, you had me for a second. I was like, "Oh my goodness, that's you do a lot regardless." And I'd imagine it's quite a game to balance all the different things you've got going on from university to lacrosse, and obviously, lacrosse for the national team that way. In addition to, just all the other life things that you have going on as a 20, about to be 21-year-old.
yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting one. I don't know what a weekend is. No, haven't for a long time. But you do learn to balance. Sometimes I'll have my weekends on a Monday.
It's an ever evolving schedule. And in relation to the university, what do you study? And in relation to lacrosse, I think you play goalkeeper, correct?
Yes, I do. So at university, I study financial mathematics. So it's a pretty academically demanding course. Lots of contact hours with lecturers and having seminars and revision as well. And, university really love to make all of our exams at the exact period in lacrosse when we've got all of our competitions. So it's always been an interesting one. But I mean, having played lacrosse since I was about 9, 10 years old, and I've been part of the England setup from the pathway from when I was about 12. So I've always had to balance the three. And before then, I played loads of different sports. I was a gymnast until I was about 16 as well, to quite a high level. So I've never known what life is without being busy. So it just feels like second nature at this point.
No, 100%. And it's so interesting you say that because I find a lot of athletes, especially in lacrosse, but across all sports that way, have this just never like they don't have breaks in their schedule. Like you said, you don't know what a weekend is. You haven't known what a weekend is for years that way. And I think that comes from, like you mentioned, that balance of academic rigor with pushing yourself in athletics and so on that way. And it's always funny how things overlap, like you mentioned, with the exams and that sort of thing overlapping right when lacrosse gets really busy for you that way. And it's one of those things that it's like, I think sports and athletics teach you so many things that you're never going to get elsewhere in life, right? Like you can't teach this level of time management in a university class. But
No,
if you play
absolutely.
lacrosse and you're in university, and oh, by the way, you throw history of other sports in there as well, you kind of learn it by doing it, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely trial and error. I've had times where I've been student athlete and times where I've been an athlete student. It's just whichever one takes priority at that moment.
What advice do you have for other, student athletes or athlete students, depending on what takes priority to use your words that way, that are kind of struggling to balance things, or, maybe they're going through a transition period, kind of like you did when you said you did gymnastics up until 16, and then all of a sudden, gymnastics is no longer in the picture that way. How do you go about kind of balancing all these different demands and things that you have going on?
Yeah, of course. So I think the main thing to do is to be really on top of everything. I use my calendar app religiously. I think everything from practice to lectures to even booking in, a coffee with friends, it's all on one calendar. And just being able to be really prepared and know exactly what my day is going to look like 2 days in advance really helps me to know exactly what's going on and how to prep best for it, especially being an elite athlete. You've not just got schoolwork, practice, social life, you've also got to get in nutrition, sleep 8 hours, everything else on top of it, recovery. So staying really organized, also developing a really good support system has been really key for me. Lacrosse, luckily enough, is a team sport. All of my teammates around me at Nottingham, a lot of the other girls play at England and Great Britain. So they're very much going through the exact same thing as me. And also, we have really good athlete services at our university. We get lifestyle advisors, academic tutors. And so there's such a big support system that I can lean on when either training gets very intense or academics get very intense, where I can kind of offset some of the problems and some of the thoughts that I'm having, and someone else can just do it for me for a little bit, if that makes sense.
No, that does make a lot of sense. I love that kind of approach of having a team built around you to support you, if you will, that way, because no one ever makes it alone in any endeavor that way. And to your point on organization, that's definitely something I need to be better about myself. That keeps coming up over and over again, and I'm like, man, I should really start actually using a calendar and, stop trying to just memorize what I have each day that way, because I think to your point, the day goes a lot easier when you know what to expect. And I mean, there's always, new twists and turns that get thrown at you. But in general, if you have kind of like this plan for the day, I think it goes a lot better than just kind of figuring it out as you go, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned about the gymnastics and kind of background in other sport as well. Do you feel like that kind of helped you succeed in lacrosse, or do you feel like it was just kind of too different? Or kind of walk me through that kind of development of you as an athlete, if you will.
Yeah, of course. So I've been playing sport for, I think, longer than I can remember. Before I could walk, I was probably in a gym at some point. My parents were both very sporty, very athletic. And so it's just been kind of ingrained in me as part of life. So when I was younger, used to do quite highly competitive gymnastics. And then I also did loads of different sports with school. I used to do Muay Thai, which is a form of kickboxing, tennis, cross country, netball, you name it, I've probably done it. And also I've been training S&C wise. I started doing CrossFit when I was 12 and I've been in the gym ever since. I've got the gym bug, absolutely hooked. So I think particularly gymnastics helped me develop quite a good athletic base. And I think that's been really important in my development as an athlete in general, rather than specifically to lacrosse. It gave me, first of all, those skills that you need as a general human being, discipline. From the age of 8, you're training 3 times a week after school. You have discipline, consistency, regular training. Also, gymnastics teaches you how to, I guess it gives you strength, but body strength, if that, so you're doing handstands, cartwheels, all of the other tricks and everything involved. You really have to manage your own body and develop a mind muscle connection really from very young. So then when you start going to the gym, everything's a lot easier. Also, it does help having such great mobility from a young age, so that when I start getting old and stiff, which I'm feeling at the moment, I've got a little bit more leeway now. I think Muay Thai was really important in my goalkeeping development, particularly. A lot of the time, when you're young, especially, people are scared of the ball, but I'd been hit in the face, so I wasn't that bothered about it across the ball.
That's an incredible combo of Muay Thai and gymnastics, and I love that combination. I mean, we just talked about gymnastics a little bit on the podcast recently with Todd, who's an American Ninja Warrior competitor that way. And, I think gymnastics covers such a wide array of developmental characteristics, like you mentioned, from mobility to strength to just this overall sense of body control and body awareness And I think if you get it at a young age, you can kind of keep it long term. It's really difficult to lose, but I've also found, to your point, it's difficult to learn those things as you start to get older. Not to say it's impossible, but I've never done a handstand before, and I've tried and practiced, and it's getting harder and harder the more I try, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But here we are. And to your point on Muay Thai, I've worked with a number of different lacrosse athletes who always come in like bruised and almost kind of beaten up, and half the time they don't know where it came from. It's just kind of like a side effect of the sport of lacrosse, if you will. And I've noticed goalies usually get the majority of it. It's like, they kind of give you a pair of sweatpants and expect that to protect you from 60 plus mile an hour shots.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The bruises are definitely an interesting one. It's always fun when you've got to dress up nicely, and I'll be in a lovely dress and I've just got these massive bruises.
Can't cover everything up, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
But how did you initially get into the sport of lacrosse? And, when you started playing, did you kind of bounce around, play everywhere? Or did you like start right in with goalie? Or what did that kind of like initial gateway to lacrosse look like for you?
Yeah, so I was a kid that would do every sports summer camp possible. And one of them, when I was about 10 years old, happened to be lacrosse. So gave it a go. We all got taught with field sticks. Started off actually in attack for about 2 years. I think it was my second or third time playing that we realized the team had a goalie at the time, but they thought, oh, let's see if anyone else wants to be a goalkeeper. So who fancies hopping in goal, seeing some shots? I was the only one that put my hand up. Gave it a go, and luckily enough, there was one of the players that plays for Wales, played for Wales. She was coaching at the time, and this was after a couple of years in attack. So I kind of knew what I was doing, knew how to hold a stick, could run around a little bit, and she asked, oh, does anyone want to have a go in goal? I hopped in, and she actually talent scouted me to continue down that pathway. She put into place, like, she gave me a coach. She put into place a lot of different drills that I can do. And so I pretty much fell in love with it straight away. I made a first save, and by making a save, I think I stood there and they hit me with the ball. But I don't think there was much purpose to that action. And just the adrenaline rush I got from denying a shot, I've been hooked since.
No, that's absolutely incredible. I love that you kind of like had that feeling and that rush, and you're just like, you know what, this is right where I'm meant to be. It's so interesting because as I've talked with athletes, a lot of times they'll kind of be like, yeah, when I was 2 or 3 or 5 years old, everyone's got these dreams when they're a kid, and they never really dream of being where they're at in the moment, right? Like you probably didn't dream of being a goalie for international lacrosse team that way when you were 5 years old, but here you are now today, and it's like it's an incredible life. It's just like it's better than anything we could have thought when we were children that way. And it's just so crazy how that works. And to your point too, it sounds like you're in the right place, the right time, around the right people to a certain extent. And it's so funny to me how I think just going out there and trying things and kind of like, taking the shots, pun intended, I guess, because you're a goalkeeper, shooting your shot, so to speak, ends up kind of getting you right where you need to be. You don't have to have it all planned out. I know we talked about how organized you were earlier, but it's like, you don't necessarily always have to have everything planned out. Sometimes you just put yourself out there, throw things into the universe, and it throws it right back to you.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you've articulated perfectly what a lot of my career has looked like, with even to the international level. So the way that I've always been part of the England program, as I mentioned, but with Great Britain, that's the sixes format, which is going to be going to the Olympics. We, as a nation, we combine England, Scotland, and Wales together to make Great Britain, and maybe Ireland, but I actually don't know. That's
like North Ireland, maybe, or I know there was something
there's
about North
something in
versus South
between,
Ireland
yeah.
there, but I don't know all the details myself.
Yeah, geography is not my forte. That's why I do maths. But yeah, so the trials for that was actually it was an open call out. So you write a form, and then you could be potentially invited to trial. I was quite young in the England program, not really making many waves. I'd played for the England in the under-20 European Championships, and I just started off in Nottingham. I was actually in their second team, and I just thought, oh, I'll give it a go. I'll throw my hat in the ring. I ended up going to the trial, and about 4 months later, I got my first senior Great Britain cap. So it was pretty much just a shot in the dark, and it set me on this trajectory, which I'm on now.
We've been talking about that international play or international cap, if you will. For people who don't necessarily understand what that looks like on the international side of things that way, what's the typical travel entail? What are the typical kind of like practice games, all that sort of thing look like for you on the international side?
Yeah, so we meet together for camps, I'd say twice a month on the weekends. So it'll be 2 training days, a Saturday and a Sunday. Hence why I have no weekends, because England meet twice a month and GB meet twice a month. So there's only so many weeks. And when we have international competitions, it's the best experience. It's you get your kit, you get to wear the badge, wear your country's badge on your top, and you're traveling together as a team because you train together so often, and because especially in England, lacrosse is quite a small community. So if you play lacrosse, you know everyone else that plays lacrosse in England, basically. And so I've grown up playing with the girls that I'll be there, that I am then traveling with to go play for our country. And so we've all seen each other come up this and seen each other's journeys in coming up and playing lacrosse to a high level. And I think the most special experience is actually stepping out on the field and singing your national anthem. It's you see it on the TV and you see all the players, crying and really going for it. And I always used to think, oh, a bit dramatic, But when I did step on the field and for the first time got to sing I think it was God Save the Queen at the time, God Save the King now, but which is the English national anthem, it was really special. It was a great moment, and just to think that it's such a special experience and not a lot of people will get to do this was pretty humbling.
Yeah, no, that's such a great way to look at it, a great perspective and mindset that way, because you're right. It's such a rare thing for someone who plays lacrosse to get to that level, right? You consider how many athletes play lacrosse worldwide, or any sport worldwide for that matter, and then you look at the numbers of how many play at a university level and then how many play beyond university for something like an international team. And it's a very slim number, and it's like such a great honor to be able to represent your country in that sport on the international stage that way. And going back to what we talked about earlier about how sport teaches you all these different things that you don't get anywhere else, I think, and I've never played international sport for anything. I'm not that good. I'm not that athletically talented. It's never going to happen at this point. However, I look at that and I think, man, there's so many lessons that come from that, right? You work really, really hard for a really long time with a really good group of people, and you just kind of have this relentless pursuit of greatness within your sport, if you will. And that opens up all these different doors and avenues and opportunities that, again, it's bigger than your wildest dreams. And on top of that, you get so many awesome experiences out of it. Like, I'm sure the memories you've made traveling with the team and kind of going different places or playing against different countries are things that you're going to remember for the rest of your life that way, like core memory type things here.
Yeah, definitely. There's, like you said, the travel. Some of the countries I've been to, I don't think I could have ever imagined I would have gone without lacrosse. So in the past 2 years, I've been to Prague, Hong Kong. I've been to Florida, Indiana, and hopefully this summer I'll be off to Japan and China. So just all over the place, and yeah, the connections you make, especially. I think lacrosse is such a special sport because it's a quite a tight knit community, if in a way, I've not really experienced it with another sport where you'll find someone that plays lacrosse even on the other side of the world or on the other side of the pond when we went over to Indiana, and immediately you've got something in common. Immediately you've got a bond. You've got something to talk about, and everyone that I've met has been so wonderful and just such a great person. And so it's so great that sport can bond people from all different backgrounds, all different places, and just have that to have a common connection with them.
Where's your favorite place that you've traveled to through lacrosse? And then which place that you've been to has had the best food?
Oh, that's a good one. My answer is going to be pretty basic for food, but I'd say my favorite place I traveled to was Hong Kong. It was amazing. It was a great experience. We were there for the Hong Kong Super Sixes tournament with Great Britain. It holds a special place in my heart because it was my first senior Great Britain cap that I got out there. So that I'm obviously going to be quite biased, but the city itself is gorgeous. So many like skyscrapers, and it just feels like this massive metropolis of just busyness and hub and like everything. And then we went and visited a viewpoint and a national park. So you've got the city, and then you'll just have some gorgeous mountains and lakes and nature just like 20 minutes out the way. And I really enjoyed that. I'd say best food, probably actually Florida. Funnily enough, I think we just went to some really good places when we were out there. I had some really good Mexican food out there. I had the best tacos I think I've ever had in my life. Some birria tacos out of a food truck in downtown Tampa. And I this was last year. I still think about them to this day.
You know, it's so funny you say that because I'm literally flying to Tampa tomorrow from when we're recording this. So I'm
No
gonna have
way.
to find this place and get tacos while I'm down there, I think.
Yeah, please do. They'll change your life.
It is incredible to your point how that first kind of like travel to a new place or that first experience in a new area can really open up a whole new like way of thinking or just like a whole new like set of opportunities, if you will, that way. I've certainly seen that myself when I travel that way, and I've seen it amongst other people. It's like you always kind of remember that first time going someplace new, unique, and special that way. And I think the more you travel, the more you gain that kind of worldly perspective, if you will. And, you know, it's interesting because you're talking about Hong Kong, you're talking about the cityscape and the skyscrapers and stuff. And then you started talking about nature, and I'm like, that's like a perfect mix, if you will, right? Like some people really love the city, some people really love like nature and being outside and stuff. And you're kind of getting the best of both worlds there by the sound. So it's great to kind of have places like that that kind of cater to all audiences, if you will, that way. And I'd imagine as part of this international travel, you've got to, you know, stay up on your training, stay up on your scholars and academics and that sort of thing as well. What does the typical day in the life training look like for you, Sienna? You know, day in a life training as a like international team goalkeeper, if you will. What does the typical day to day look like from that physical development side?
Yeah, so a typical day for me will start at about, depending on when my training is, probably at about 6:30 in the morning, I'll be up. Because nutrition for me is really important. I found that through my years of training that you have to prioritize food and eating and fueling your body. Otherwise, you're just not going to get the best out of a training day. So I try and start my day nice and early so I can get fueled in quite well. And then I'll head over to my lift, which is a team lift. It's with the lacrosse team at uni. Always good fun, great way to start my day. Everyone's laughing, everyone's joking, but we're also getting a great workout in. So that'll be how I start my day with a lift. Then I'll be off to class for most of the day. If I'm not in class, I'm in the library. And then I'll probably halfway through the day head over to, I go to another gym nearby for my recovery. And I'll probably head over and get foam roll, sauna, cold plunge, just get my body feeling good again. And then I'll do some more work, probably meet up with the girls, the lacrosse girls, and get a bit of lunch. I tend to do that before training. And then in the evening, I'll go to training with the team. After that, home, dinner, sleep, do it all again.
This is a full-time job. Like this is
Yeah.
like, you know, everything to your point before about organized and regimented and scheduled. Like you've got time every day for recovery, you've got intentional time for food, you've got time for lift, time for training, and that's something that I see a lot of athletes missing, right? Like they know that recovery is important, they know that nutrition is important, and yet they never really block time for it or never do it consistently. And ultimately, we recognize they're important, yes, but just doing them once or twice is not really going to be enough to actually get you where you want to be. I think you really need to stack that habit and stay with it consistently like you're doing that way. And, to your point before, that's not necessarily easy to do, especially when you're balancing all these different demands that way. So what advice do you offer to other athletes that are, recognizing all these things are important, but not sure how to put the pieces of the puzzle together, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. The only reason why I'm this strict with myself about it is because I've made the same mistakes before. I've done it all, and then it's come out in my training when I'm actually crashing at 4 o'clock, or I'm getting overuse injuries, and or I'm going through a bit of a slump in my training. And so I'd say to other athletes, almost nip the habit in the bud before you start to see the negative effects of it. So if like I was, if you're aware that you're not recovering enough or not eating enough, then actually be really intentional about it. And you always know you have lift at 8, training at 6. You know when classes, when, or if you're working, what times you're working. So it's really important to actually say, oh, in these 2 hours, I can either scroll on TikTok or I can foam roll. And so I'll be like, oh, I'll go and foam roll. I can scroll while I'm on the foam roller, but it means that I'm forcing myself to go and do this because I know that I'll actually have a better training session in the evening. So it's almost justifying it to yourself by saying, I'll do this because of this. And you got to go, you've just got to be disciplined with it.
It's this concept of delayed gratification, right? It's like I
Exactly.
have to put the work in now and I'll get the results later. Yeah, and that's something that I find is very difficult for people to kind of wrap their head around. It's like, because to your point, like TikTok is great. Like I love TikTok, but
Yeah.
me doing TikTok doesn't necessarily get me more jacked or more athletic or make me feel better when I wake up in the morning, unfortunately. On the contrary, I actually tend to feel worse, right? If I lay in bed up late, scrolling, like I wake up the next morning, I'm like, man, I shouldn't have done that. And then if you let that win, you do it again, it becomes a lot harder to break that habit. So I think there's something to be said about that power of delayed gratification, putting the work in now for things that you might not see the results of for a few days or weeks. And that is literally the epitome of sports and the epitome of fitness, right? Like,
Yeah.
you go to the gym once, you're not gonna, get the, ripped body or whatever it is you're after immediately. You step on the lacrosse pitch once, you're not going to immediately become, international level here. It takes so many hours and so much time to get to the point that you're at. And that's something that I also see athletes, especially younger ones. I don't know if they fully grasp that concept or understand just how many hours and how much time it takes to get to the level like, someone like you is at that way. And I'd also imagine it's not necessarily all fancy, cute, crazy things all the time. It's probably simple things done ridiculously well, right? Like, trying to block the same shot over and over again, or going to the gym, doing squats and deadlifts over and over again, right? Like a lot of times it's just doing the foundational things ridiculously well so that when it comes time to play your sport, you might be about an inch wide in skill, but it's a mile deep in the ground.
Absolutely. I think you've put it completely. I couldn't have put it better than you did. I think also the main thing, especially with young athletes, like you were talking about delayed gratification, to get to, and I'm again nowhere near the top of the sport, so I've still got so far to go, and to get to even a point where you have a foot in the door. Looking back, it takes so much sacrifice as well. You do have to. You don't live a normal life as an athlete. You know, you've got you like, especially when I was younger, I remember looking at my friends, seeing them. I'd never be able to go to the parties. I missed all my friends' 18th birthdays because they were always on a Friday and I had training on Saturday, or you know, things like that. Or if everyone's going out at uni, for example, because we can go out at 18. And so a lot of the time, some friends are going out, especially in first year. That's how you make a lot of your friends, by going on nights out with them. And I had training in the morning, or if I were to go out, I wouldn't recover well. So I've had to say no to a lot of things that a lot of normal students probably wouldn't. And I think that discipline has driven all of my other discipline. So it's, I didn't go out so I could train. So why would I stay in bed? I'm training now,
I
you
love
know?
that. And it's not to say you can't balance both a little bit,
Not at all. Yeah.
but you have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror at the end of the day as an athlete and say, what is my goal here? What is my intention? Where am I heading? Where am I going in life that way? And if you want to be the best, if you want to go to the top, you have to make these sacrifices. And if you don't believe my word for it, obviously Sienna is a living testimony to it, but we've worked with so many other athletes that are doing the same thing in other sports, playing at that Division I university or that professional level or national level that way. And they all say the same thing over and over again, right? Like the one girl missed her prom, which is big deal here in America, because she was training. And it's like, not many people are willing to make that transaction. And that's okay. You don't necessarily have to. However, if your goal is to be the best, don't expect to get there without some kind of sacrifice, right? Like you mentioned, you're in the financial space. Like there's an opportunity cost to everything. What am I giving up in order to, make this transaction, if you will, that way? And, we talk about that in relation to finances and business, but in reality, it applies a lot to life and athletics just the same.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely all just cause and effect.
And I mean, on that cause and effect too, I've noticed a lot of athletes, the more sport you play, the more susceptible you might be to get like what we call a sports injury, where, it's usually associated with people playing sport. I don't see people do something like tear their ACL or blow their Achilles by sitting on the couch and watching the TV that way. So, have you ever faced any injuries in your journey or career in sport that way? And what does that look like? What does that rehab recovery process look like? And how are you able to kind of keep that mental sharpness, if you will, as you've gone through that?
So yeah, I'm hypermobile, which essentially means that not a physio, so this won't be the technical terms. This
I,
is just
I,
what
I
I
want your
understand from it.
terms more than my own because my terms are a little bit too complicated for people and I hate them, honestly. I would rather explain it in your terms than my terms.
Okay, please correct me if I get anything wrong, but essentially, my ligaments and all of my tendons in my body are a little bit more flexible than an average person's. And so my joints like to dislocate with not a lot of movement, if that makes sense. So I've had in my career, towards the end of my high school career, I dislocated my knee. So I rehabbed it. I was out in November. My school career final year started in September. Dislocated my knee in November. I rehabbed it to get back to our final tournament in March, and unfortunately, 5 minutes into the first match, I redislocated my knee, and that wasn't through not rehabbing it properly or not enough strength. Just a girl decided that she wanted to run through my knee that day. So I was completely out, and I actually missed out on my first junior England cap because of that injury. And was then going into university, college lacrosse, having taken a whole year out of the sport. And my first time back was going to be playing on a tour with England. So that would be my first time putting my kit back on. So that was, I'd say, my biggest injury. I had, after my second knee dislocation, I also had a patellofemoral ligament replacement because they wanted to make my kneecap move like a normal kneecap. And it's pretty cool. I got a cadaverous Achilles tendon put in. So that basically means that it's the Achilles tendon of a dead person.
Pretty crazy to think about, right? Like you've got the Achilles tendon of someone else holding your kneecap kind of more stable position that way. And,
Yeah.
to your point about the hypermobility, I've seen so many female athletes with that. And it's so interesting because they'll often come to me and they'll say they feel tight. and then I move them around, and I could never hit the positions that some of these people hit. Like they can just up and drop into the splits, no stretching, but they feel tight and they've been told to stretch and stretch more and stretch more when in reality, in American terms that way, for lack of a better way to put it, it's a problem of too much WD-40 and not enough duct tape. Things move
Yeah.
too much. We don't have enough strength and stability to hold it together that way. So, I often tell them that I think this feeling of tightness that they get might not necessarily be muscle tightness from like, oh, it's, not moving enough. I think it's the opposite. It's, hey, we can get into this such extreme position where, as you mentioned, the joints can actually move out of place. So the muscles kind of guard up to try and prevent that from happening because they know they're not strong enough there. And it's such a difficult thing for athletes to work through because there's a lot of mismanagement, I think, and misinformation out there. And there's not enough of a like, general path of, hey, here's what to do when you have this. And as you mentioned, unfortunately, we could do all the things right, the rehab and so on that way, and we could still get very unlucky and unfortunate, and we can prevent a lot of things, but we can't necessarily prevent, someone kind of, running into us or running us over and that sort of thing. These, freak things happen that way, unfortunately, but it's not what happens, it's how we choose to respond to it. And obviously, I know we've talked before, and it was a grind of a rehab for you. As you mentioned, it took months and months and months just to be able to get back to what you were doing on the typical day to day, but you're able to do it. You're able to get there and you were able to accomplish it. And going back to what we talked about earlier, kind of that foundation of you being committed to this disciplined long-term development, delayed gratification, like all of that helps in rehab. If you don't have that process of, look, I'm going to do little things today that are going to stack up to a big win later on, then rehab becomes very, very difficult following an injury that way. And I think having that right mindset, like you did, really helped you succeed in, your MPFL recovery that way.
Yeah, definitely. I think my mantra for my rehab, especially with a total of almost a year out, was just control the controllables. So when I was in a knee brace, I couldn't walk after my surgery. I thought, right, well, what's the closest thing I can get to training? Okay, I'm going to start researching sleep. I'm going to make sure I'm sleeping right. And then, oh, I'm going to make sure I'm eating right. So I actually got myself really educated on everything else that makes you an athlete. And in fact, it's made I've come out better. So now I can walk and I can play lacrosse and I can run again. But I also have so much more knowledge on the other parts of being an elite athlete that I probably would have ignored had I not have gotten injured. Because before my injury, I just thought, oh, I'm playing lacrosse. That's good enough training. I play 5 times a week. That'll do. But actually, there's so much more to it.
I love that you did that. It's like, we can find opportunity in anything that happens. And I think that sometimes, injuries are unfortunate and I never wish them upon anyone. But, it is a opportunity to, as you kind of alluded to, step back and kind of reassess, hey, these are the things that I've been doing. This is where I'm at. What kind of things should I, tighten up in my framework that way? What kind of things could I be doing better? Because if there's one thing I've learned about athletes, it's they're never satisfied with where they're currently at, and they always want to be better. They always want to do more. They always want some kind of advantage over their competition. And it sounds like you were able to kind of embrace this slow period to do just that, right? You mentioned that you took the time to educate yourself and learn more about sleep and all these different things that actually go into the performance on field that most people never even really think about. We watch people play the sport, but we don't ever see all of the training and all of the prep work that goes into that. And I think that's such a powerful and impactful thing for athletes to do because at the end of the day, your best asset is your mind, and there's so many athletes that display that in sport over and over again, right? Like, we see some of these athletes playing into their 30s, their 40s, and even later in life, and they're still able to play at a high level, even though physically maybe they're not as good as they once were per se, but mentally they're, their like sport IQ, for lack of a better way to put it, is just so sharp that they're able to see the game in a way no one else can.
Yeah, absolutely. A book that I read quite a lot throughout my rehab was I might get the title wrong. I think it's I Can't Help Not Trying, or like I can't, and it was Michael Jordan's book. It's really small, and I got it on Amazon, and it basically it's his mini autobiography talking about his story and his injury, and particularly how when he was at UNC and even before he went to UNC, he didn't make his varsity team in basketball. And what he did, he said, "Oh, I'm gonna train every day. I'm gonna make myself a list of goals, and then I'm gonna make myself steps on how I'm gonna achieve those goals." And I pretty much just adopted that and thought, if he can not make his varsity team and now be one of the best basketball players of all time, I think I'll be all right.
I love that, and it's that ability too to learn from other athletes and other people in the space that way. And I think to your point before about traveling internationally and meeting all these people in sport that way, that's where that stuff becomes important too, right? It's like you kind of build this like friend group or network, if you will, of all these people in sport, and they're going to face things and trying times. They're going to overcome them and win whatever battles they're facing because they're strong, disciplined people just like you. And then their successes almost become motivation and fuel for your future successes. And then your successes end up helping them, and so on that way. It kind of becomes this giant game that's larger than, the games we watch on the TV that way, where it becomes people helping one another and kind of lifting each other up to higher ground. Sienna, I love all the things that you've been doing in lacrosse and sport in life, and especially that injury recovery rehab mindset that you've adopted that way. And I think that's something that a lot of other athletes can certainly take advice from, and use that as like motivation for their own trials that way. Do you have any kind of closing thoughts or closing remarks or anything else that you wanted to talk about today that we didn't get the chance to?
I guess just what I've really adopted as a philosophy as an athlete is whatever journey is meant for you, that's what's going to happen. So I quite recently had quite a big deselection. Last summer, I wasn't picked for the under 20 World Cup, having gone in as a favourite. Um, and that was a huge hit for me. And it took a lot of time for me to even fall back in love with the game and to see the outside of the darkness, if that makes sense. And the way that I did that was by saying, that this is such a long journey. I'm so young. This is a minor setback in what is a massive goal. So I'm trying to get to the Olympics. Okay, I wasn't picked here. That's got nothing to do with what's going to happen in 4 years. So I guess just whatever's meant to be will be. And if a door closes, it's because another's going to open. And I always try and go into big selections like that. The reason I think I made peace with it so well was that I always go into selections and trials having completely calm. I don't get nervous. I don't get nervous going to games. I don't get nervous going to trials because I know that I've done absolutely everything I can to get myself to the position I am now. So whatever happens on the day isn't a result of, I'm not then thinking, oh, I should have done that training session last week. Oh, I should have done that extra set. Because when I'm in that training session, I'm thinking, well, I don't want to look back and think I should have done this. So I can go into every game, every training session, every selection with no regrets, knowing that I did absolutely everything I possibly could to get to where I am now. And if it's not good enough at the time, that's okay.
It's such a powerful mindset, Sienna, to have this concept of, I'm going to go at it with everything I've got. And it's okay if I come up short. It's okay if I fail. It's okay if, this is not meant to be and this is not the will of, someone or something much larger than myself. But it's not okay to leave something on the table. It's not okay, to just kind of, for lack of a better way to put it, half-ass it. It's like, you've got to go all in or full send or whatever the new trendy term is for these sort of things that way. And I think that a lot of people that don't do that end up kind of looking back later in life and wondering what if I did more? What if I, tried a little bit harder or put in extra time? Or what if I didn't skip this thing? And I think that, today, if you never say what if, tomorrow you'll never have to wonder what if because you've left it all out there. You've put all your cards on the table, if you will, and you've gone all in. And I think that's such a powerful like framework for living life or just a great way to live life in sport and beyond that way. And I think even if you fail at your most ambitious thing, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to fail completely. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't understand is even if you come up short, you're still going to end up in a much better place than you've ever been before and learn so much from your journey that way, right? Like I think there's like a saying about, shoot for the stars, and if you miss them, you're still going to be on the moon or something along those lines, right? Like even if you miss your like main target goal, you can still end up in such a better place than you ever were before. And so many doors and opportunities open up to you as you just kind of commit to this process of, living and pursuing your goals and dreams that way.
Absolutely. And it's such a noble process to just, see how far you can go with what your passion is.
100%. And Sienna, for people who want to find out more about you and keep in touch and just stay up to date with all the incredible things that you're doing, and I know you put a lot of great stuff out there in relation to lacrosse and athlete development, all these other things too. Where can they find you at online?
So I'd say Instagram or TikTok are the best ways to find me. My Instagram is my name's Sienna Parekh and then an underscore. And then my TikTok is Sienna Tara 22.
Awesome.
So I put a lot of like lacrosse content, also lifestyle content. So yeah.
Yeah, we'll link to all of that in the description below too. That way, if you didn't quite catch it, you can just click there and see everything that Sienna is up to. Sienna, this was incredible. I love what you're doing. I love the journey that you've been on, and I cannot wait to see you continue to excel in athletics and life and everything of that nature that way. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.